Welcome to the Solid Verbal. The Solid Verbal.
Come after me! I'm a man! I'm 40!
I've heard so many players say, well, I want to be happy. You want to be happy for a day? Eat a steak.
It's that woo woo.
And now, Dan and Ty.
Welcome back to the Solid Verbal boys and girls. Ty Hildenbrandt here. Dan Rubenstein over there. solidverbal@gmail.com, as always, is our email address. Don't forget, you can find us right now for free out on itunes.com/solidverbal. We also are on Twitter and Facebook and Snapchat and Instagram, and of course, solidverbal.com and sbnation.com. Sir Rubenstein, how are you?
Good. Ty, guess what?
What?
Oregon didn't choke away a game.
Yay!
Here it is. Do we have the rights to this song?
Nope.
No? Okay.
Nope.
1 second. Okay. Yeah.
How did that happen?
That's a good question. Utah. We like talking about secretly decent and secret garbage. Utah might be secret garbage. They lost to Cal as well.
I did some deep diving of the stats today, Dan.
Yeah.
And I noticed an alarming trend. All three of Utah's losses have come in games where Joe Williams doesn't have 180 rushing yards.
Only 149 yesterday.
Yeah.
Selfish.
Okay, Week 12 is now in the books. My friends, winter is coming.
Winter is coming.
It is blustery outside here. If you're in the upper Midwest or Eastern Seaboard, you will know this quite well. I drove home last night in a near whiteout. There was thunder snow, there was lightning, all sorts of crazy stuff going on out there, and it was reflected in some of these box scores I think that we're going to go through and narrate for you. Mm-hmm. And certainly if you watched any of the games yesterday, if you saw Michigan, if you saw Rutgers, if you saw Western Michigan, there were some blizzards going on out there in the wide world of college football. So if nothing else, it kind of added a little flavor to an otherwise kind of boring is it fair to call it boring Week 12?
No, man. Iowa State, go Clones. Exciting Week 12.
Whoa, yeah.
I'm looking at a current U.S. weather map, and it's not great.
No.
It's not great. It's a lot of purple. Purple's never a good color. You know what we probably... Okay, so we have a sound to play for what happened Thursday night with the top 5 team.
We do.
You can take your pick. We've got a couple sounds.
I do have a sound. Let's pick this one.
Guess who just got
Murdered. I feel like that's the most accurate. Louisville allowed 11 sacks against a Houston front that kept coming.
Yeah.
And that, my friends, is all you need to know about that football game. 36-10. Houston wins at home over Louisville. They effectively end Louisville's playoff chances. Despite the fact that we kind of lost track of Houston over the last couple weeks after they lost, this was an impressive showing.
It was incredibly impressive, and another game that goes to show that what Houston is doing is in large part, and I would say the majority, it's defense. Houston is giving itself opportunities by turning teams over, by overwhelming offensive lines. And the offense, actually, if you look at what their yards per play is against FBS teams, which is as close to an equal footing as other teams in terms of metrics, they're 80th in the country. They are the 80th. So they are, at best, right now, with their health, an average offense. And I think they're 9th defensively. So they are an excellent defense led by, as you mentioned, Ed Oliver, but even guys that were making plays behind. Stephen Taylor had a huge game. Khalil Williams had a nice job. Nick Thurman, like the names go on and on. If we are also going to play, we don't need to actually play, but it would be fitting to play this stop, they're already dead, please sound for what Houston's defensive front did to Louisville up front. And once again, a short week traveling on a Thursday night to play against a really good defense. I don't care how good Louisville is. I don't care how complete they are. I don't care that they have Lamar Jackson. These are all great things. It is just a tough ask, and that's what Houston took advantage of.
It really is. They held Lamar Jackson to 1.3 yards per carry and a 47% completion percentage. And that's all to say a Louisville offense, which by many metrics was top in the country, just 10 points. So it was a thorough beatdown. The two subplots that I think fall out of this, aside from the fact that Louisville's not going to be in the playoff anymore, the two other subplots, though, are A, to what degree does a really bad game now hurt Lamar Jackson in the Heisman Trophy race? Mm-hmm. And B, does this now guarantee, in light of what went on elsewhere in college football, that Tom Herman's going to be coaching in Austin next year?
I don't think anything's a guarantee. I don't think Austin is the most attractive job to everybody. As we saw with Charlie Strong, there is an element of it just being a fit job. Mac Brown, for a long time, was a very good fit. Administrators changed, and with bad administration comes bad policy and bad management, and suddenly it becomes a much more difficult job to succeed at, even with the advantages that Texas has. Same could be said for LSU in the way that they've managed, and within the context of the state of Louisiana and their monetary situation and academic situation. There is no sure move, because sometimes the movement isn't always the better decision. You know, maybe Tom Herman just likes Houston. Maybe Tom Herman wants to go somewhere where he doesn't have that path. Maybe Jimbo Fisher likes Florida State and the situation of not playing Nick Saban every year. I don't know. I don't think there's always a grass is greener situation.
Yeah, and as far as the Heisman goes, what Lamar Jackson has done to this point, I think, is still far and away better than what the competition has done. I've had a hard time all year identifying who's number 2, who's number 3, who's number 4 in that Heisman discussion. Mm-hmm. I still feel like he's got a fair gap between himself and whoever people determine is second. But certainly you throw up a clunker like you did here, and that's going to show. That's going to show. It's not all on his offensive line, because he looked average. Even when he had time, he didn't make the throws that I think we're accustomed to seeing him make when he had a chance. I still think he's your Heisman Trophy winner. You know, I'm not a huge Heisman Trophy fan, but if I'm picking, gun to my head, it's got to be Lamar Jackson at this point.
Can I give you a name?
Go ahead.
D.D. Westbrook. D.D. Westbrook keeps finding the end zone, and on plays where it's not just Baker Mayfield finding him open, and mind you, getting open is also a talent. It is after the catch stuff. It is just consistently demolishing every corner and safety and linebacker put anywhere near him. D.D. Westbrook has had a season for a receiver. He's at almost 1,400 yards. He has 15 touchdowns right now. I think he's averaging well over 100 yards a game for a really good playoff conversation team. I think he has to, at the very least, be in New York. And Baker Mayfield is having, within the context of his position, absolutely a killer season. But D.D. Westbrook, I'd be right now, if Lamar Jackson has another down game, which also isn't to say that Lamar Jackson hasn't had an excellent year, I'd be okay with D.D. Westbrook taking home a lot of hardware.
Yeah, and by the way, if Texas didn't have Deontay Foreman, what would their record be?
True. Very true.
I don't know if he gets serious consideration just by virtue of their record, but he's had a pretty good year too. Okay. Houston wins 36-10 over Louisville. A huge statement game for Tom Herman for the Houston Cougars, and a big letdown spot, obviously, for Louisville. Let's get to your Week 12 reverbs before we get through all the other action. Have a listen.
They did it! The Jayhawks did it!
This is John calling from Boulder, Colorado. This is Spencer from Big Ten Country.
Hey, Dan and Ty, it's Kate from Richmond.
Hi, this is Kara from Herkimer County.
Hey, guys. First off, excellent podcast. Currently my favorite.
First of all, I'd like to say Boomer Sooner. Grateful for the win. I'd like to point out that as a little bit of a disgruntled Oklahoma fan, I think we're probably the worst playing potential playoff team.
I've been to a lot of games before. I've never seen traffic this backed up leaving a game. It's halftime in Morgantown.
Cowboys just won. 2-point conversion unsuccessful. Save the drama for your mama. The Cowboys win the ball game. Woo!
Please be aware, police are descending on Loris, Kansas, arresting every Kansas football player they can find for the murder of Charlie Strong.
After weeks of hearing about how anemic the Florida offense is, the old saying is true, defenses really do win championships. Or at least division titles.
My kids are crying. It's not because they're hungry. It's because we had a 4th down stand. It was amazing. Go Gators!
Maryland was already bad. Then they got worked by a QB whose name sounds like a medieval amusement park.
What was your favorite Illinois punt?
Oh, wow. Michigan State's quarterbacks are bad.
The Big House, where you can be part of the largest crowd watching a football game anywhere in a snow globe today.
Final score from Ann Arbor, Michigan 20, Indiana 10. Temperature change in 2 days, minus 36.
Just watched Michigan ride the struggle bus for the last 3 hours. But I just wanted to say congratulations, Dan, on Oregon's big win. And congratulations, Ty. You will no longer have to watch Notre Dame play into the Christmas season.
And I'm excited to hear how upset Ty is going to be after watching Malik Sear for the last 13 seconds of that game.
Is there going to be a Verby category for best Jinx Lock of the Week by Dan on the Notre Dame Fighting Irish?
My Hokies beat those Notre Dame Fighting Irish today. Coach Fuente for Coach of the Year. Go Hokies.
HQ, this is Agent Cardinal. I'm unsuccessfully stuck behind enemy Houston Lions. We would be out of here by now, but Coach Petrino crashed the getaway motorcycle again.
It sure was fun watching the Cavman's Bronco get stung by a yellow jacket. Wahoo!
And right now, I'm not sure what I'm enjoying more. Pitt beating Duke by 45 points, or the fact that Pitt being unranked by the College Football Playoff Committee is keeping Penn State out of the national title hunt.
And after one quarter, Chattanooga is leading Alabama 3-0. Roll Mock.
What is big game Bob Davie doing against CSU right now? Really? It's like he's coaching Notre Dame again. I got no idea what he's doing. Thought we were good, but nope.
When you were here literally the day that they lost to Sacramento State at Folsom, and now you're also here the day they beat a top 25 nationally ranked Wazoo, all you can say is Sco Buffs.
All right, with that as the backdrop, Mr. Rubenstein, with Houston and Louisville and that massacre in the books here, at least on the verbal, where do you want to go next?
You want to start with the race to 5, Notre Dame versus Oregon? Who's got it?
Let's go to the Big Ten.
Let's go to the... Okay.
Some have called this the best, most interesting conference in college football this year. Certainly, it has the most interest, I feel, of any conference now as we enter Week 13.
Hard disagree.
Okay. We will get into that.
Okay.
Ohio State and Michigan State, close game. Michigan, Indiana, close game. These two teams both won. They are both now on a collision course with one another. There is a new wrinkle now with Michigan's starting quarterback being out for the season. But let's first start with Ohio State and Michigan State and what went on there. Final score was 17-16. LJ Scott, who had a really nice game for Michigan State, he scores late. 4:41 left in the game. The score is 17-16. Mark D'Antonio, feeling it, getting excited, thought maybe he had momentum there, decides let's go for 2. They don't get it. They don't get it.
They do not.
The score ends up holding. 17-16 was your final. Sparty now has 8 losses, blah, blah, blah. Do you agree with this decision to go for 2?
100%.
Really?
I kept hearing Sean Connery's quote about the prom queen from The Rock. Just what winners do, Ty.
Yeah.
And I don't think Mark D'Antonio is somebody who wants to settle for overtime. I don't think his personality is such, even though it's Big Ten and the jokes about everybody being conservative and, low scoring stuff. I liked the move in bad weather against a team that was clearly more talented with a defensive line that was so, no pun intended, green and inexperienced for Michigan State. They're super beat up along that front. I'd take the 2 yards. Do I like the play call? Do I like the execution? Absolutely not. Yeah. But putting the game in your own hands, I'm always going to agree with. I always like the aggression.
I usually love
Why not
this
here?
Move. I love the move when a coach goes for 2 when you get bold. I always say to you, history favors the bold, right?
Sure.
But at that point in the game, it wasn't like Ohio State was doing much on offense. This was not a situation where you turn the ball back over to the Buckeyes and it's a guarantee that they're going to march down and score on you. I just felt like they probably had enough defensively to get another stop, get the ball back without putting themselves in peril here, potentially to lose the game if you don't get the 2. But I like the gusto. I love the gusto, always do. It just felt like this was a bad application of it.
Yeah, Ohio State was running the ball well, and in fairness to your point, Tyler O'Connor's game was it was very bad. It was very bad. He was 6 of 16 for 100 yards, but even that was something to behold with what JT Barrett was also able to not do, which was throw the ball with any consistency. And in fairness to them, throwing the ball with a frozen hand is probably very difficult.
Yeah.
It's probably difficult, but yeah, I don't know. I still feel like there's a weird talent thing with Urban Meyer and Ohio State where they would have found a way either at this moment or in overtime. So I'm okay with it, but I get where you're coming from.
Ohio State wins. Good for them. As I said, they are on a collision course with the Michigan Wolverines, Dan. Interesting matchup here.
Yeah.
By the way, we both took the points in both these games, so we were pretty much on fleek with our analysis.
Oh, good Lord.
Indiana led this game with about 5 minutes left.
Yeah, they did.
Another one of these games where if you're not watching it live and you're updating your scoring app of choice, you keep refreshing like, okay, is this stuck? Am I in an area of bad reception? What's going on? Why is it 10-6 Indiana?
Is everything okay with the space-time continuum? Yeah.
About 5 minutes left, Indiana had a lead in this game. That's when Davion Smith asserted his will. He had 158 total rushing yards in this game. About half of that yardage came on 2 long touchdown runs in the final 4 minutes of the game. But if not for him, if not for their defense obviously keeping this one well within reason, they certainly couldn't count on John O'Corn to do much. They didn't try to do much with him, but just 7 of 16 for 59 yards in this game. They pretty much relied on a rushing attack. It's going to be altogether different next week against Ohio State.
Yeah.
I don't know what kind of offense Michigan's going to try to put out there, and I'm half inclined to see if I can find a proposition bet somewhere that they just convert themselves to read option with Jabril Peppers?
The answer to your first question, I would imagine, is not much of one. This is Michigan for the second consecutive week with their backup quarterback and John O'Corn, but struggling to find any answers. Again, it's in the snow. It's horrible weather. It's hard to throw a ball with a frozen football. But guess what? Next week is outside in the Midwest. It's probably not going to be super warm in Columbus, Ohio, if I had to guess. At this point, though, I wonder what's going on with Michigan's offense. I wonder what's going on with Ohio State's offense. And man, October was a fun time for the Big Ten. Really, really glad they Reggie Jacksoned because November's been garbage for the conference, largely. In terms of the headlining teams in Michigan and Ohio State, fair or not, I've been nothing but disappointed. Northwestern totally fell off. Michigan State, all year long. Just other than Wisconsin and Penn State, I'm not enthused because we're looking at Michigan and Ohio State through the lens of can they compete with Alabama down the road? And I think after yesterday, and I understand that whatever game they play against the Tide, it'll be indoors, but I got way less confident in any of those teams' abilities.
Yeah, but who are you confident in?
Alabama.
Yeah, that's the thing. It seems as if everyone's trying to lose so they don't have to play Alabama. And I wouldn't blame them because, honestly, they're the best team. I'm going to come back to Penn State and Wisconsin and some of the other stuff in the Big Ten a little bit later on. But basically, all you need to know is this. If Penn State beats Michigan State next week, which seems like it's well within the realm of possibility, and if Ohio State beats Michigan, which also seems like it's fairly probable, that would send Penn State to the Big Ten championship game against Wisconsin. Which would be a rare twist of fate.
Yeah, literally thousands of people are going to watch that game. So, let's get on that stage. Let's go to the Big 12, which was, I think, far and away the most interesting conference of Week 12.
Oklahoma 56, West Virginia 28, Dan.
Yeah.
I told you, do I get half credit here? You going to give it to me?
You do.
Baker Mayfield only threw 15 times. All game, 15 times. You might look at that and you're going to say, wow, did he get hurt? Is he okay?
Good use of those 15.
He's fine. Oklahoma's fine. They made a stylistic decision on the road at night in Morgantown that they were going to run the ball with their 2 bell cows and Samaje Perine and Joe Mixon.
In inclement weather as well.
In inclement weather.
Big part of it.
55 carries, 307 yards, and 3 touchdowns between Perine and Mixon. This game was over almost before it started. 34-7 at half, 41-7 right after half. At one point, late third, early fourth quarter, it felt like West Virginia was making a charge. And in fairness, they did pull it to within 13. But Oklahoma quickly got the ball back. They imposed their will. And now this is a team that I think is really interesting. It's been interesting for a few weeks. I've been warning people, don't sleep on Oklahoma. Don't sleep on Oklahoma. Don't sleep on it. It doesn't seem probable that they would make the college football playoff. And I still don't think it is. But I'm telling you right now, depending on what happens in the Big Ten and depending on what happens to Washington, Washington's the big one, there is a chance.
The case against Oklahoma is Justin Crawford ran for 330 yards.
That too.
He ran
that
for
too.
1,000 feet.
Important anecdote.
Oklahoma's defense is not great. And I know the committee, because of Oklahoma's lack of bigger wins before this week, was pointing to the fact that Oklahoma's offense was super prolific. Right now, you might have to point to the fact that Oklahoma's defense is maybe the worst part of a playoff conversation team, because for the second time in 4 or 5 years, Tavon Austin ran for 300 and some odd yards against Oklahoma late in the season. There is some worry about Oklahoma, but on that note, there is more worry about West Virginia because Skylar Howard could not get anything done largely, especially in that first half. And we were getting tweets from West Virginia fans in the first quarter, ready for Will Grier in next year. Is it time to start previewing next year's the 2017 Mountaineers? West Virginia is a good team, but they were picked apart against an excellent offense last night. And that's okay. West Virginia is still a top 25 team. They're 8-2. They have a shot to finish out the season in a strong way. And I would imagine, who do they finish with? Who? Baylor?
Yeah.
Yeah, they're gonna beat up on Baylor. That's just what's going to happen. So a lot of positive things to take away from that. And they do have Iowa State, who completely demolished Texas Tech yesterday. But West Virginia still has, I think, positive momentum.
Yeah, I mean, Texas Tech made Joel Lanning look like Lamar Jackson yesterday.
Yeah. Is Cliff Kingsbury, should he be on the hot seat?
On the hot seat? Sure.
On the hot seat, yeah.
I would say. Don't you think?
I mean, have they improved at all defensively during his time there?
No.
In any sort of significant way?
We thought
Joel
so.
Lanning,
we thought so for like half a season last year.
Right.
Because I remember beginning part of last season, we're like, wow, they're a lot better. And then, no. I think he probably should be, to be honest. You lose by 56 on the road in Ames. Yeah, I'm inclined to say hot seat's appropriate.
I don't know what he's doing right now.
Fair enough. I want to go back to Oklahoma real quick because we were talking about this playoff thing. I think they're the interesting case study of all the interesting case studies out there, because let's just say Washington loses. And let's say
Wazoo. Let's
say it's Penn State, Wisconsin, and Penn State ekes one out over Wisconsin. Entirely plausible, right? Then the committee is basically left with the decision of putting a Penn State team in that's looked much better after that Michigan loss, and they also would be in the very same conference as Ohio State, who at that point I think would be a shoo-in to be in the playoff. Or do you put another conference champion in the form of Oklahoma? How does the committee feel about putting two teams from the same conference in the playoff?
Here's the counter to the counter to the counter to the counter. At this point, with what Colorado did yesterday, so Colorado beats a ranked team by 14. They close that game out strongly. They have an opportunity. I haven't seen the latest rankings. I assume Utah is probably still going to sort of find themselves in the rankings. Maybe not, but 12 and to out is a precipitous drop.
They'll be like 20th.
So if they're 20th, so if Colorado finishes the season with a win over ranked Wazoo by 14, ranked Utah, and if they beat Utah, and if they beat top 10 Washington in the Pac-12 championship game, the conversation, is Penn State demonstrably better resume-wise? They have the huge Ohio State win.
Whoa, yeah. I don't know. Consider Colorado, but you'd have a Pac-12 champ. They'd have a lot of steam on them.
You have a conference champ, and Penn State would finish the season with their own top 10 win. It's a better scheduling decision from Colorado. I mean, until Sefo Liufau got hurt, they were sort of hammering Michigan. They were really, really good in that game. and that's a better loss than the Pitt loss. I don't know.
Yeah.
I just think that there's a conversation to be had at that point with what Colorado's doing, and if the committee is looking at dominance in metrics, Colorado's defense is stronger, is at the same level or stronger than anything Penn State does.
Wow. All right. Well, Colorado. You mentioned Colorado. Let's go to the Pac-12 here. We'll come back. I promise we'll try to address all the other subplots that have gone on within some of these conferences. But the Colorado-Washington State game was arguably the biggest game of the day, and just a monster effort from Sefo Liufau. We talked last week how he looked sharp. He would not be denied in this game, Dan. He hurt his hip, but he fought through it. He came back out, 345 through the air, 108 in the ground, 3 total touchdowns. A good effort from him. Another solid effort from Phillip Lindsay, who had a $144 on the ground for Colorado. They win this game 38-24. You alluded to this, but I'm going to bring it back up here a few moments later. The story for me is one of defense. It's not offense.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Washington State went ahead late in the third quarter, 24-21, I want to say.
Sounds right.
The Buffaloes step up on defense. Wazoo's next 4 drives, listen to this. Turnover on downs, punt, fumble, interception. All the while, Colorado's offense is going on a 17-0 run. That's what it's about right there.
Mm-hmm.
That's what it's about. If you get the stops on defense, if your offense can dovetail with it the way they did, that's what it's about here. That's how they won. Colorado's going to move up again, I would assume, in the standings.
Mm-hmm.
And who would have thunk at this point in the season that Colorado and Penn State would both be top 10 college football playoff teams? It's incredible.
Yeah, I mean, they kept pushing good teams these past couple seasons, Colorado, but couldn't close out the games. And I think it was a matter of depth and coaching all coming together at the same time. Colorado, you're absolutely right. The defensive stands that Colorado had, it's the story. It's the fact that Luke Falk started the game out really well, took a couple hits and didn't seem fully the same. Jamal Morrow looked great in this game as an all-purpose weapon, but Colorado on the ground was something that Washington State never really had an answer for in earnest. Phillip Lindsay was workmanlike. Sefo Liufau goes for over 450 yards total between his efforts through the air and on the ground. Devin Ross had a very nice game. And Colorado's defense, the combination of what they're able to do up front in swarming the Washington State line, and then just how deep and talented and fierce that secondary is. Colorado is a team that I would think 97.4% of the country would have a ton of struggle with.
And as you said, they now control their own destiny. They beat Utah. They're on to the Pac-12 championship game. Probably I'd say against Washington, but Washington does have a losable game coming up against Washington State.
Yeah.
Washington State's much improved. Their defense is much improved as well. And as you said, it's on the road, and it's a rivalry game. And a rivalry game, too, we got to throw the records out the window. So we'll see.
A team we haven't mentioned within the context of 2 losses should be in a conversation, especially given their performance yesterday, Ty. Oklahoma State.
Okay, you want to go back to the Big 12?
I want to go back to the Big 12 briefly because Oklahoma State, and we're going to have a stupid conversation about the Cowboys if they went out and they beat Oklahoma, and that conversation is, do we treat this team as an 11-1 team? They don't have a conference championship game. They have a loss that both conferences involved with officiating that game admit was not the actual result of that game. And yet it's in their loss column.
Kirby Hocutt, didn't he say that they're viewing it as a loss? It's not in their purview to determine bad calls. Or
I understand that. But if the officials in that game, and it's not a conversation we have to have yet, but if Oklahoma State finishes 10-2 with a win over Oklahoma and a result that the officials have ruled shouldn't have been such, that's a conversation of sort of playoff eligibility and playoff consideration, because Oklahoma State against a TCU team that had been improving and had looked very stout defensively, TCU scored a single touchdown in the first quarter on a tiny field, and that was it. Oklahoma State ran the ball perhaps better than they have all season long. They've run the ball very well in November, so they're looking a lot more complete offensively. And defensively, they completely shut down, and TCU's offense isn't all that great. Kenny Hill looked lost. The offensive line looked lost. There was just nothing doing for the Frogs, but That's in large part because of what Oklahoma State was able to do. They look like a top 7 or 8 team yesterday.
Yeah.
And that's something. That is something.
By the way, everyone in Oklahoma must have gotten the memo to just run the football because they kind of did. They went same game plan as the Oklahoma Sooners. They ran the ball for 334 yards. And this, to me, I thought was a really impressive victory. TCU was favored by 4.5. We both took, I know I took TCU in this game. What's impressive to me is the way that they cut through this TCU defense because it had been improving. It was getting better. Before the year, it was a big part of the reason why idiots like me were all in on the TCU to the playoff bandwagon. It hasn't worked out for them offensively, and clearly it didn't in this game. But the reason that I'm most impressed here is what Oklahoma State did to that defense. They just blew it to smithereens.
They blew it to smithereens, and that was actually in large part because of TCU's offensive ineptitude. The fact that they were getting off the field so quickly, I think they were, 6 of 16 on third downs, which isn't fantastic. They just weren't moving the chains at all. So their own defense, TCU's defense, was just gassed, and that's where Oklahoma State really took advantage. Justice Hill, great name, by the way. TCU went to the top of Justice Hill, and it did not end well. So, love the fact that another nice game from Mason Rudolph and Oklahoma State, year after year, they are, I mean, this is something Ryan Nanny, our pal, mentioned on Wake Up College Football. You know, Big 12 fans in the conference laments the fact that they don't have a championship game, but year after year, it seems, well, Bedlam ends up being that game. We
have a lot more to discuss here, but
yes,
we have a new sponsor that I also want to introduce to our Verballers, Hylete, Hylete. They design and create premium performance apparel and gear with input and feedback and support from a passionate community. You're not going to find them in stores. You can only find them out on hylete.com, Hylete. They cut out all the resellers, so there's no markup. They can offer you significant discounts on literally every order. And right now, if you go on out to hylete.com/solid, SOLID, if you use our code SOLID, you can receive 40% off. 40% off the retail price of your first purchase. I was tooling around on the website.
I'm on it right now.
They got some neat stuff there. Not going to lie. They make 4 different kinds of men's Verge shorts, they're called. Okay. From something called a quad cut, which is like mid-thigh, to a long cut, which they say will land at the knee of someone who is 6'4". So for me, that goes down to like my ankles. But basically, regardless of your size, regardless of your preference, you can find a perfect fit, both in the waist and in terms of length. Their shorts have pockets that are high on the outside of the hip, which makes it easier to keep your phone out of your hip crease.
Yep.
And all their pockets of zippers, which is simple, but it makes it easy to, not lose all your stuff when you're at the grocery store, at the gym, wherever else.
Great.
Yeah, it's good stuff. So again, go to hylete.com, Hylete.com/solid. Use the code SOLID. You'll get 40% off retail, your first purchase. The promo code expires in a couple weeks. So act now, buy a few Christmas gifts, and report back. Let us know what you think.
For sure.
Since we are jumping around here, Dan Rubenstein,
I'm just going through the big ranked games. Yep.
Week in, week out, we tend to group things by conference, but sometimes we decide to mix it up. Where should we go next?
I think USC. USC, as long as we have already mentioned the Pac-12 in the late game, 36-14. They fall behind early. The big pass, from Mike Faithful. Is that what it is?
Sure.
Faithful to oh God, who was it? It was Jordan Lastly, I believe. A blown coverage play, but USC on the ground, Ronald Jones, workmanlike effort. He was really good. Sam Darnold continues to amaze and sort of screw up like freshmen do sometimes, but he has a very nice game, and I think the story was USC's defense just completely swarming UCLA after a couple of broken plays, and USC needs After needing a Utah loss yesterday, they need a Utah win over Colorado to play against either of the Washington schools in the Pac-12 championship game, and USC certainly peaking right now in terms of momentum.
I disagree.
Okay.
The story had nothing to do with the game.
Oh, okay.
The story is that we have our winner for Factoid That May Only Interest Tom Hammond of the Year.
Ooh.
We have our winner. So listen, if you're just tuning in, we got a bunch of tweets this week from people who just found us. Thank you for listening. We appreciate it. Do subscribe at itunes.com/solidverbal. And if you like the show, leave us a rating or a star review. But look, we do something called the Verbies. It's our own little goofy award show because we get bored in the off season. I do have a form out there now where people can nominate. I'll post that. I've yet to post that in anywhere other than our newsletter of intent, which we send out every Friday. I'm going to send out a little early this week. We have a category called Factoid That May Only Interest Tom Hammond. And it's a category for the weird stuff that announcers basically say during a broadcast. Like these little anecdotes that they pick up. Brad Kaya's mom was in Friday. Like weird stuff that you find out during the course of a broadcast in a college football season.
Bye, Felicia.
Sam Darnold's grandfather was a gentleman by the name of Dick Hammer.
The Dick Hammer. The
Dick Hammer, yes. He was the Marlboro Man.
Yeah.
The Marlboro Man. So Sam Darnold's grandfather was a Marlboro Man. Also, his name was Dick Hammer, which should not be undersold. But that, my friends, I think is your big story of this game.
Yeah.
9-3, probably, for USC. Do you know how inconceivable that seemed 2 months ago?
I mean, did they start 1-3?
Yeah.
That is inconceivable, and they did a great job doing so. They have, I don't know who, some nobody in the final week of the season.
Some independent, yeah.
Some independent, nothing. Yes, it was an extraordinary job. It was nothing, and we'll totally forget this by next year, but Clay Helton is the poster child for, let's just see what happens all year long before we put a first-year coach on the hot seat. Let's just see, especially with as much talent as USC clearly has. But yes, rolling off wins against not much. They had Colorado and then a whole bunch of nothing before the big Washington game last week. So a really incredible job by Clay Helton getting this team together after looking in September, that first month of the season. We knew it was going to be tough, but just unprepared.
Yeah.
And I get the Max Brown choice. You know, he's the senior, or he's the experienced upperclassman. He has a concept for this offense. He has the poise, whatever, going against Alabama. But as we see Sam Darnold and the just sort of, and I'm not a huge fan of this phrase, but the sort of it factor of he just seems so comfortable. He's just impossible to figure out. They are a completely different squad.
Sam D. Arnold has been remarkable this year. And yeah, the postmortem on this season is going to be that USC lost to 3 ranked teams and they beat 2 top 10 teams, at least. Season isn't over yet, so we'll see.
And they're going to get so much attention this offseason.
Oh, yeah, baby. Yeah.
You know who they open with? Row that boat, Ty. Western Michigan.
Oh, wow.
At the Coliseum. I doubt PJ Fleck will be coaching that team, but if he is, hey, there's a thing. And they have Texas in week 3.
Oh, boy. Okay.
Yeah. And whoever's coaching Texas. So maybe it's PJ Fleck one way or the other.
Yeah, seriously. All right. From one hype machine to another.
Yeah.
Washington won 44-18. Not a whole lot to cover here outside of the fact that Kevin King had an incredible Odell Beckham-ish kind of interception.
Snatched out of the atmosphere.
It woke Washington up. They went on a run offensively, scored a bunch of points. Really the story, though, Washington's first-string defense through 3 quarters allowed like 84-ish. It was less than 100 total yardage before the second-teamers came in. ASU's not very good this year.
They're not. No.
We've known that for a while, but it was good to see Washington playing defense, doing the things they need to do. They've got a big one next week.
You want to talk about Wisconsin real quick?
Sure.
Wisconsin scores 35 points in the second quarter. They continue, and we are heading into Thanksgiving week to play 2 quarterbacks, which, okay. Bart Houston was the better of the two quarterbacks yesterday.
5 of 6 passing.
5 of 6 passing. Alex Hornibrook, 7 of 9 passing. But I think it's the depth that they're building after they were just so wounded last year in the backfield. So it's Corey Clement, Dare Ogunbowale, I hope I got that right, as well Bradrick Shaw, the new big name, seems to have a ton of promise. He was great for Wisconsin after they start out slowly against Purdue, but then just completely lay it on thick.
Penn State won 39-0 over Rutgers. This was not a close game, but it did take Penn State a little while to get going here. They had a few missed opportunities early. We talk a lot about this eye test, committee looking, seeing, who do they get the warm fuzzies when they watch? If you watch the early part of this game, you didn't get the warm fuzzies about Penn State. Trace McSorley throwing into the teeth of a winter wind.
Oh, not pretty.
Is not pretty, and it wasn't pretty. He underthrew guys. He had a few others that were questionable whether or not it was his fault or a receiver's fault, but they were able to get things going, and certainly they've got a big one next week against Michigan State. Again, they win. Ohio State wins. They are essentially into the Big Ten championship game. 39-0 was your final here. Again, not a close game, but some stuff early that I think they need to clean up if they want to be a serious contender.
Are you, as a Penn State fan, are you worried about a Michigan State team that has literally nothing to play for?
Yes.
I think you should be.
And we saw it this past week. We saw it this past week against Ohio State with Michigan State. They could have won that game.
Is that game in State College or game's in State College?
Game's in State College. James Franklin's out there. He's trying to get everyone and their uncle to come to the game. It's going to be loud. It's going to be proud. It's going to be exciting. Probably going to be a little nippy, but that's November for you in State College.
I'm seeing scattered showers in the 40s next Saturday.
That feels about right. That's pretty much every day in the winter in State College.
Mm-hmm.
I think you're wise to not overlook that game. Penn State should be favored. They should win the game.
The Trace McSorley thing is a little bit worrisome. If it's going to be bad weather next week, that Michigan State can simply ugly it up and win 13-10. So,
no.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting watch.
All right. Elsewhere, very quickly in the Big Ten, we had Nebraska, Minnesota, and Iowa all win. Mm-hmm. Any notes for you from those 3 games?
Minnesota keeps winning. I mean, their schedule was, this is something we looked at the outset of the season when some sort of ESPN metrics said they had the easiest schedule in the country, and it wasn't wrong. It was not wrong at all. So Minnesota moves to 8-3, and they have Wisconsin next week, I believe, to finish out the season.
Yeah.
In Camp Randall. So Minnesota could have themselves another really nice season, riding a very manageable wave.
Let's go to the SEC.
We have an SEC East champion, Ty.
Let's go to the SEC.
Yeah.
Honestly, the most exciting part of the game was the fight that broke out before it. But Florida won 16-10 at LSU.
Mm-hmm.
They won on a goal line stand. They stopped Darius Geis from the 1-yard line. That allows them to win. That propels them forward now into the SEC championship game. They win the SEC East. Hurrah, hurrah. Here's what I take away from this.
Please.
A sloppy game for LSU. They had 2 turnovers. They screwed up a field goal. Now they're 6-4. Granted, they got a game left against A&M, which I would assume they're going to win if they just run the ball. On one hand, you could say that they're banged up, and they are.
Mm-hmm.
However, you can look at this game and you could say they could have beaten Florida pretty easily, but they couldn't get out of their own way. And that reflects on the coaching. Ed Orgeron, I think his case was significantly weakened by this game against Florida.
Yeah.
I think it was significantly weakened. I still think he's the front runner to keep that job.
Still?
But if Jimbo is interested, if Jimbo is interested, I think it's Jimbo's.
Yeah, I don't think front runner status is in line with what's happening right now after that loss, especially because you call a timeout and the running back runs the wrong way. That is coaching. That is coaching. Not having your team prepared, not having players prepared for big moments, especially when you're playing against a team led by Austin Appleby. I'm sure Austin Appleby is a very nice guy. Maybe he's not. I don't know. But if you can't beat Florida and a Gator team that's that beat up on defense and that inept for the most part offensively, they had the 98-yard touchdown, which was like a third or like 50% of their yardage, whatever it is. if you go into the red zone 5 times and you score 1 touchdown, you get 10 total points out of 5 trips to the red zone. That's a problem. That's play calling, that's organization, that's focus. And LSU has an interim coach, and it showed. Florida took advantage. They won ugly, and now Florida is going to get completely blitzed and obliterated by Alabama in the SEC championship game. But hey, 2 years, 2 SEC East championships for
not
Jim
bad.
McElwain. No, not at all.
They are the quietest 8-2 in the country. A very quiet 8-2. It hasn't always been pretty, but it's still been a successful year. They won the SEC East, so good on them.
We have breaking news, Ty.
We do.
Can you play it?
Breaking news!
Just because it's a thing that I like in college football, TCU's safety, Kalen Moore, got a Rhodes Scholarship. Because if we are going to be focusing on factoids that only Tom Hammond would like, TCU has a Rhodes Scholar.
Okay. Stay in the SEC, okay? Mm-hmm. Did we or did we not call this Vanderbilt game?
Oh, man. Well, here's the literal sound of me patting myself on the back.
Vandy was the home dog of the week. We both said it. We both expected Shea Patterson would have a harder time with this defense, and he did. And Vandy, for their part on defense, held Ole Miss to a season low in yardage. How bad, Dan? How bad is this Ole Miss defense? Because we do have a sound that we haven't played much this year, and I'm going to play it now. How bad is the Ole Miss defense if they're giving up 38 points and almost 500 total yards against the Vanderbilt Commodores?
Yeah, I don't believe Vanderbilt has scored. I'm going to look this up because defensively they've held teams down in the SEC. They held down South Carolina to 10, Florida to 13, Kentucky to 20, Georgia to 16. Yeah, they have not scored 30 points in an SEC game.
Until now.
38.
Yeah. Vandy went down 10-0 in this game, and they ripped off like 31 in a row. Nice game for Ralph Webb. He had 123, 3 touchdowns, but bad loss for Ole Miss. They now have 6 losses. They need a win in the Egg Bowl to get bowl eligible. I guess a nice win for Vandy here. I don't know. It's about time they got a good one.
Yeah, they finish with Tennessee, which is they can compete against Tennessee.
Strangely winnable.
Strangely winnable. It's in Knoxville, so I would say Tennessee should be rightfully favored comfortably, but they have an opportunity to either finish 6-6 with a win and get automatic bowl eligibility. I think they'll probably end up eligible anyway because of their APR, so eligible as a 5-7 team for a bowl game. Derek Mason slowly but surely incrementally improving the doors, and yeah, an amazing victory, an amazing season for Zach Cunningham defensively. Ralph Webb, another nice game for the Commodores. So yeah, man, Vanderbilt finishing if they could finish 500 with wins over Georgia and Ole Miss,
not bad.
Great year.
Not bad. All right. Elsewhere in the SEC, I'll rattle these off very quickly.
Please.
Tell me if you've got anything of note. But Alabama, Tennessee, Georgia, A&M, South Carolina, Kentucky, and Auburn all win.
Well, Arkansas also beat Mississippi State.
And Arkansas beat Mississippi State, excuse me.
Yeah, in a bit of a shootout.
Yes.
Raleigh Williams had an enormous day for Arkansas in their shootout win. So November, it's a little bit of life.
Okay. Let's go to the ACC. We talked about Louisville and that game at the top of the show. Let's talk about Virginia Tech. I didn't want to talk about Virginia Tech, but let's talk about Virginia Tech.
Coastal leader.
That's right. By the way, your ACC game went over real well.
It's impossible. It's very difficult.
People like the ACC game. You could play the same game with, hey, which side of the ACC is this team in?
Mm-hmm.
But okay. Virginia Tech 34, Notre Dame 31. I watched this one at a bowling alley. Tech was down by 10 at half. They rally. They outscored Notre Dame 20-7 in the second half. Notre Dame's secondary couldn't hang with Tech's wide receivers. Tech's got a really good group of wide receivers. They couldn't hang with them.
Yeah.
So Gerard Evans, I told you he scared me. He missed 7 passes all game, 22 of 29, 267, 2 touchdowns and an interception.
About 70 more and a touchdown on the ground, too.
Notre Dame's lost 7 games by 32 combined points.
Do you take that as a positive sign, promising that they're ready to turn get back to that corner?
Well, they're 4-7, Dan.
Or they don't know how to close games out.
They're 4-7. They're not a good team. The fact that they're not getting blown out tells me that they're not the worst kind of worst team, but they're not able to close games out. It also feels to me like they're not able to find that next gear on offense. Offense wasn't so much an issue here, but they did kind of go in a shell after starting hot. They couldn't close it out. They couldn't maintain that same level. And it's just a matter of things not working together. When they get the running game going, it seems like the passing game goes away and vice versa. So they've just been off kilter all year long.
Right.
And 4-7 should not come as a surprise to anyone. If you watch, by the way, I got to laugh. I'm sorry. I have to throw this in here. All the grave dancing that's been going on out there, the big headlines and the tweet storms about Notre Dame 4-7.
Yeah, 3-6, 4-7. Yeah.
It's not overtly snarky. I didn't see the same hubbub for Oregon when they went 4-7 or Michigan State when they went 2-7. So it's
people like those schools, Ty.
I know, even if it's not overtly so, it's snarky. I was thinking about this in the shower today.
Yeah.
This is for me like the Tim Watley thing in Seinfeld. It doesn't offend me as a Notre Dame fan. Mm-hmm. It offends me as a fellow snark trader. Because it's all about the timing, right? This joke's been dead for a month and a half now. If you're still making the joke about Notre Dame being whatever, now it's just lazy.
I don't think you get to make fun of the joke being dead if you're the recipient, if you are the object of the joke, Ty.
But I'm relieved. Okay. I'm relieved at this point that they're not going to go to the Motor City Bowl. I don't even know if they have a Motor City Bowl. So I feel like it's a lazy joke at this point because it's been so dead already.
Well, the market has spoken differently.
I want to see how many clicks those articles are getting because I bet it's not as much as you'd think.
It broke our servers, Ty.
Yeah, right.
Do you know how many points Notre Dame has scored combined in the fourth quarters of Stanford, Navy, and Virginia Tech? Three teams that have been down, have had nice comebacks second half of their year, but how many points combined? So that would be 45 minutes of game time in those three fourth quarters.
10?
3 points.
Yeah.
They scored 0 against Virginia Tech, and I believe it was 3 against Navy, 0 against Stanford.
They got to do something on offense.
It's not good enough.
Earlier it was a defensive thing, and the defense has gotten better. They're still young, but okay. They need to have some sort of come to Jesus meeting about this offense because it hasn't worked.
Was there a pun intended there?
There was no pun intended, but it kind of works. Thank you.
Yeah.
It started with the 2 quarterback thing, though.
Right.
It all started with the 2 quarterback thing and the controversy and not naming one over the other. And here we are. Kaiser's going to go pro. I think Zaire's going to transfer. And so there should be 1 quarterback next year in Brandon Wimbush.
And it's also 0 against NC State in the fourth quarter, but those are different circumstances. 7 against Duke in the fourth quarter. And Michigan State, they had 14 in the fourth quarter to cut it, I guess.
Okay. Clemson won 35-13 over Wake. Wow. Okay, Wake. Bad beat if you pick Clemson minus 22.5.
Is Clemson as deeply flawed as they look in terms of hanging on to the ball consistently? Are they our best hope for beating Alabama still?
I guess.
Because of the talent level on defense, at least up front, and good Deshaun Watson?
I would take...
With maybe one of the 3 or 4 best receivers in the country, Mike Williams?
I would take Clemson's chances right now over Ohio State's. A couple weeks ago, I felt differently.
Need a quarterback.
And
JT Barrett is not that guy right now.
All right. Florida State, North Carolina, Georgia Tech, Miami, Pitt, and Boston College all win. Boston College shut someone out 30-0 over UConn.
Whoa. Not just someone, Ty. UConn has not scored a touchdown since October 22nd, the second quarter of the civil conflict. Your boy, Bob Diaco.
Still a great head of hair.
Great head of hair, not a great offense full of points. UConn is extremely bad right now.
We got some more bills to pay, and then we'll run through all remaining action here, Dan. SeatGeek. It's the smartest, easiest way to find tickets for the football games you want to see up close and in person this season. As you know, there's nothing like being in the stadium for the biggest plays of the year. With SeatGeek now, it's easier than ever to get guaranteed seats you want for great value. It is rivalry week. It is approaching. There are a lot of big games out there. If you're a fan of one of these teams, and if the weather's going to be nice, why not give SeatGeek a holler? It's a free app. We both have it on our phones. SeatGeek is not new to the program. We've been talking about them all year. What I like about SeatGeek most, first and foremost, it's easy to go on there and just browse to see what's going to be in my area. It's not all about football. There are concerts, there are other events that you can buy tickets to through SeatGeek. But it's easy. You can go on there. They aggregate all the action from a bunch of ticketing sites, and they provide it for you in one clean, easy-to-use interface. They also grade out all of these tickets. They grade them out, so you can see pretty easily where the value is. They will get you the most bang for your buck, and it's backed by 100% guarantee. So you can shop, you can buy. All your stuff from SeatGeek should give you the utmost confidence. Right now, it's a good deal. $20 rebate on your first purchase. All you got to do is download the app. It's free. Go into settings, add a promo code. Our promo code is SOLID.
Easy.
And they'll send you $20 after you make your first ticket purchase. That's all there is to it. Use this promo code SOLID, SeatGeek, free app. Done and done.
And they're also probably going to be soft people like me who are going to see slightly inclement weather on the forecast, on the horizon, and they're going to be getting rid of their tickets. Scoop them up.
Absolutely. Okay. One topic we did not discuss, and it does bear mentioning, is the fact that Kansas beat Texas in overtime.
Oh, yeah, they did. I thought it would just sort of be verbatim at this point. But yes, Charlie Strong. And we got screwed with the Les Miles news.
Yeah.
So, as we are recording this at Sunday, about a little after noon Eastern, Charlie Strong remains the Texas coach. We have no idea if that will be the case when you listen to this. So it appears to be the end of the Charlie Strong era. You just simply cannot lose to Kansas and keep your job while you're on the hot seat at a place like Texas. And made the necessary hires to try to improve things, took over the defense second half of the season to try to get that in order. But the offense and defense were two legs walking in opposite directions. Offense trying to play with tempo, defense thin and having trouble staying off the field. And it goes to show that fit is as important a quality in a coach as anything else. And man, good for Kansas. Improving over the course of the season. Doesn't show up in the loss column, the win column, but they get it done against Texas, and good for Rock Chalk.
Yeah, it was a sloppy effort here by Texas. They were late in the game. They were up by 11, and they should have had it on ice, but they fumble. They turn it over. Shane Bichelle throws a pick in an overtime. Still a big game for Deontay Foreman. 250, 2 touchdowns. He's the one bright spot, but
hasn't rushed for double-digit yards this year.
No. Before the game, news was already out that boosters were putting strong pressure, quote-unquote strong pressure, no pun intended, on administrators to make some kind of coaching change. I'd imagine that has a lot to do with what we saw on Thursday with Houston beating Louisville, but there is going to be more steam now than ever on Tom Herman to Texas, and I would assume Charlie Strong at a bare minimum to be out. Kansas State beat Baylor?
Yeah, Baylor's ready to be done.
They are ready to be done. Big game by Alex Barnes. He is a freshman for K-State. His first game with more than 8 carries. He had 129 yards and 4 touchdowns. Baylor is ready to be done. We mentioned Texas Tech getting beat by 56. Strong showing here by Iowa State. If they could have scored 180, they would have.
The Oregon Ducks won, Ty.
Oh.
I don't have a lot to say about it. They won on a last-second catch. They won despite a dubious call in which a punt returner, I think it was Dylan Mitchell, true freshman, sort of ball grazed him, but the field ref, whatever, called a touchback as it rolled into the end zone, but then Utah jumped on it, and upon review, the touchback didn't happen, everybody. So a nice game from Oregon's defense. I think they held Utah to 7 points in the first half.
Yeah.
And they are crazy beat up. So impressive, all things considered. I don't think it's probably going to be enough to stave off a change at the top for Oregon.
You think, really?
No, I don't think it's enough. But a nice win nonetheless. The players were focused. Royce Freeman looked like he was rounding back into form, and Justin Herbert had a nice day, constantly under pressure, was able to get rid of the ball, was a big playmaker and a very bright, shining star for the future, true freshman quarterback.
All right, I got a couple questions here.
Okay.
I got a couple questions. If they decide to move in a different direction on the coaching front, we've talked a little bit here about names.
Yeah.
Who could be available. You as a fan, strictly as a fan.
Yeah.
My two questions are this. First and foremost, who are like the three names that you would want them to look at? And I'm going to eliminate Tom Herman from this discussion because everyone assumes Tom Herman.
Everybody assumes Tom Herman.
Three names that as a fan, you hope they will consider. And then secondly, sort of as a sub-question to that, do you want them to stick with the same offensive system or same style of offense that we've seen the last, 10 years? Or do you want to see them go in a different direction? Would the personnel be flexible enough to go either direction?
I don't think so, and I think that's something to take into consideration. And Oregon's in a tricky spot because they, perhaps more than most teams that are in a Power 5 conference, are defined by the type of system that they run. And because they're so far away from talent, either Northern, Southern California, and they have to recruit nationally, they have to go into Iowa and Texas and Florida and Ohio, whatever, to find specific guys. To have that brand to recruit to, I think, is a big advantage. And they'll still have crazy uniforms no matter who's coaching, but there is something about that brand of speed in the open field that plays into an advantage of theirs recruiting. It's tough. It's very tough. So I would imagine, given the personnel and given that brand, which obviously is a very important thing for Oregon, more so than a number of schools, I would imagine they're sticking to a similar system. Now, they could just hire a defensive person who just has a good network of offensive coordinators who can run something similar. It doesn't mean they have to hire an offensive head coach. But in terms of names, it would have been wonderful if the timing had worked out where San Jose State was completely turned around by Mike McIntyre, and he's on the West Coast already and has connections recruiting in California, and it would be a very smooth transition. I would still love for Mike McIntyre to be that name. I don't believe it'll be the case. Unless there's something monetarily holding Colorado back that they can't really meet market value after this year, Mike McIntyre is my name. But beyond that, you mentioned Herman already. We'll see what happens with the other open jobs. I think Oregon is a clear third behind LSU and Texas, and we are still yet to see what's going to happen with Texas A&M and whatever fallout happens from guys taking those jobs if they're not Herman. So we'll see on that front. Wish the timing would have worked out for Justin Fuente, but I didn't. Traveling that far cross country, I think, is unrealistic. I don't know. Part of me worries that Oregon's going to get like Mike Gundy. I don't know. Brian Harsin will probably get a look from Boise State. There really isn't a young up-and-coming guy on the West Coast or sort of mountain region that stands out. Matt Wells had a down year for Utah State. He was a name before that a lot of people liked. Rocky Long is very old at San Diego State. I don't know. I think it's McIntyre and Herman and maybe Harsin. I don't feel all that strongly about Harsin and then this sort of field. And I know people like Scott Frost. I don't know. Not for me.
You've got a bunch of relatively high-profile jobs out there. And to your point, not a whole lot of West Coast up-and-coming coaching talent. Like PJ Fleck. I think PJ Fleck's a good coach. I don't know if PJ Fleck is high-profile enough to get any of these jobs or if he's a good enough fit in terms of geography anywhere, in terms of personnel anywhere. That I don't know. He'll get a job somewhere, but it might be Purdue. I'm curious to see where the reaches are. Who's going to reach in and go get someone that's a really bad fit? It feels like there's a lot of potential for that this year.
Also to keep in mind with the West Coast, would not be surprised to see Sonny Dykes on the move.
Yeah.
Go to Baylor, a job like Texas Tech or something like that. Would never be surprised to see UCLA come open with Jim Mora. He seems to always be exploring possibilities. We saw Rich Rod flirt a little bit last year with South Carolina. There could be a lot more open on the West Coast, diluting the region than we are seeing right now.
Okay. And the only final two tidbits would be that Christian McCaffrey is back and healthy and had 284 yards and 3 touchdowns.
Big game record.
And Oregon State, you mentioned Rich Rod. Oregon State just piled one up on Rich Rod in Arizona, 42-17.
Also of note, South Florida is playing this week. They need to win, and Temple needs to lose to get to play your American West champion. Are you assuming it's Houston? I hope not, because it's Navy.
It's Navy.
It is Navy, doing so in an impressive fashion after losing arguably their most significant playmaker ever in Keenan Reynolds. Yep. So great job by Ken Niumatalolo so we don't have anything other than Bedlam in the Big 12 in terms of deciding the conference. La Tech and the job Skip Holtz has done. Really good. Setting up Conference USA. I think it's Western Kentucky they'll be playing. It's either Western Kentucky, ODU. I think it's going to be WKU. In the MAC, we have Western Michigan, who had game day. I don't know if you watched any of it. It was really fun.
Yeah, it was great.
They have Toledo on Friday, I believe. That's going to be a great game and worth watching. It's 5 p.m. on ESPNU. We'll talk about it more on our preview show. Boise State not going to win the mountain side of the Mountain West unless Wyoming falls, because Wyoming has the tiebreaker there, taking on San Diego State. Eventually, San Diego State has already clinched the western part of that. Sunbelt doesn't have a championship game, but Arkansas State obliterated Troy. I think it was Thursday or Friday night, and Arkansas State remains undefeated in the Fun Belt. So there's that.
Alrighty, and then our final tidbit here, Dan.
Final tidbit,
I promise.
Dick Hammer, once again, just because it's that good.
We do have news to report.
Oh.
Lehigh will be playing New Hampshire.
Yeah, they are.
They will be playing New Hampshire on November 26th at 2 p.m. It's on ESPN3. The FCS playoffs are set to begin. The Lehigh Mountain Hawks squaring off against New Hampshire.
Who's the number one? Are the Bison number one overall seed?
North Dakota State, yeah.
I love hearing that. New Hampshire, are they the Wildcats?
I don't know, but they're the former team of one Chip Kelly.
They're the former team of Chip Kelly. I'm all in on the Wildcats against the Engineers.
We'll see. Winner gets James Madison on Conference Championship Week. So there you go, Dan. A full deep dive of everything in College Football Week 12. Mm-hmm. We appreciate your reverbs. We appreciate your input and snaps and tweets and Facebook messages and you name it. Please keep it coming. Tell your friends. Tell your family, tell your coworkers. They are also welcome to join us on this ride, Dan.
During Thanksgiving, and when you go around the table and people are saying, what are you thankful for? Go through your normal things, friends, family, health, whatever. And just at the end, and the Solid Verbal, subscribe and review at itunes.com/solidverbal.
When your family is arguing about politics.
Yes. Shift it.
At the top
just say, I disagree.
At the top of your lungs, just yell Dick Hammer.
Dick Hammer.
On that note, for that guy over there, Dan Rubenstein, for myself, Ty Hildenbrandt, we'll catch you all in a few days before Thanksgiving. We'll have a big show out, we promise. Stay solid.
Peace. Maybe the D in Sam Darnold stands for Dick Hammer.
Maybe.